A slightly different video today. We're going to be doing some repairs and upgrades to this Makergear M2. But for you 3D printing fans out there, if you have this machine, we're providing a file for a side mount of the layer fan. Printable Science presents an examination of the Makergear M2, including a 3D printed side fan mount, changing a carriage, changing a fuse, and changing a hot end. Welcome back to the channel, and if this is your first or 400th time and you haven't subscribed, won't you take a moment and click the subscribe button below. That'll help us a lot in terms of making this channel more successful. The Makergear is a particularly well built piece of equipment. This is an M2, although they currently are offering an M3. We've had this machine for about 4 years, I guess, and it has been a real workhorse for us. It has printed thousands of objects, and it has been running for thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. And it has done the good job very well, but as I identified, it's an expensive machine. It's around, or was around, $2,000, and that's at the very high end of what most consumers would be willing to put out. Anyway, if you've got this machine, then you know there's a requirement to, from time to time, get access to the extruder, and in doing that, you have to remove the fan assembly, which composes of both a small fan for the stepper motor for driving the filament into the hot end, and then a larger fan for layer cooling at the bottom, but it's held on there with a screw. And so you pull that off, and then you let it kind of dangle by these floppy wires. And over time, particularly if you don't have these wires properly fastened in the protection grip there, they'll pop off, and that's exactly what they did. They popped off of here, and well, you got two choices for wiring or rewiring it. You can put the red and the black where they are, or the other way around. Gosh, I thought I checked, but no, that's the way they're not supposed to be. And the net effect of that, I discovered after Googling, is that I probably blew a fuse in the motherboard of the machine. And now, it would be a simple fix at this point if that's all we wanted to do. We just slop in a new fuse, put the plate back on, and you know, we should be in business. So, and correct the wiring as well. But I was also concerned, and have been concerned for some time, about this wobble in the extruder, in the x-axis, where the carriage fits on to the linear rail. It probably really shouldn't. So when I was communicating with Makergear, I said, is that the way it should be? I can't remember. I've had this machine for so long. And they said, no, you probably need a carriage. So we start out with the problem with the fuses, and unfortunately Makergear themselves don't sell those small fuses. I don't think they sell any of the fuses. But they did give me a link to a place that I could order them from, and I did that. And then I thought, well, while I'm at it, you know, I will ask about this problem. And they said, looks like you need a new carriage, which is the part that slides on the linear rail itself. And yes, they agreed that that was more play than there should be. So you can buy a new carriage from Makergear for $50. I don't know if that's a lot or a little, but it's a little pricey. But then again, as I say, this is a high-end machine. I put that in my cart on the site and went to check out, and I was informed that it would be $36 to ship that to me. Now the problem is since I bought this machine was bought in the United States, but I've relocated to Canada since then, and that's a new experience for anyone who's used to the kind of freewheeling attitude of the United States Postal Service and Customs of the United States as well. You can just sort of ship stuff around, and also I should say the shipping service is quite impressive as well. So was stuck with the $35 UPS charge or FedEx charge for ordering a new carriage, and so I thought, well, let me get some other stuff while I'm at it to sort of try and drive down the cost. So I figured, well, why not? Let's order new fans. And then also, what really started this whole thing, as I say, it was me pulling the fan assembly on and off because I was having trouble with the extruder, and what was happening is I was getting jams. And that was very uncharacteristic for my experience with this machine. I've run it for thousands and thousands of hours, and I've never ever had a jam. But all of a sudden I was getting them, and I finally have tracked down the problem, and that is that I was setting the retraction to too great a value. As you may know, one of the things that you do to try and make your prints cleaner with an FDM machine is to have the printer pull back on the filament when it finishes a layer, so that it's not oozing out, moves wears, and then it reinserts it. The problem is that see, there's what the hot end looks like when it's installed, and the filament feeds down through that mechanism into there. Now, for the most part, as long as the filament is always in the actual nozzle area, it's hot enough to allow it to be pulled up and pushed back and keeping everything in a molten state. But if it's pulled back into the barrel part of the hot end, then it's still molten, but it gets cooled quite quickly, and then it starts to create a buildup, and over time, very short time, it fills the nozzle, and so that cleaning the nozzle doesn't do anything. You got to clean the barrel. Anyway, it was in one of the many attempts to try and diagnose the problem and just fix it so I could keep on printing that these wires popped off and caused all these problems to begin with. So, as I say, we now have a number of things to do with what we've ordered. We need to replace a fuse. We need to put in new fans, and we also need to install a replacement carriage to hopefully reduce this rocking motion here in our X-axis. Now, there's one more thing, and that is, as Makergear 2 users know, the standard configuration for the fan and layer fan is somewhat like this. And that's fine, and it works fine, except if you're printable science, because you want that fan out of the way so that you can actually show what's being printed, and the fan in that configuration obscures things. So what we did some time ago was we designed a mount that the fan sticks over on the side so that we can photograph straight on and still get the cooling. Now, that was a multi-piece fan, and we figured we could improve upon that. And so what we will be replacing it with is this one-piece fan holder for both the extruder fan and the filament fan. So there we have it, and I will go about this. I'll leave comments as I go. As I say, the first thing to do will be to remove the carriage. Oh, and let me just show you this carriage. This is how it comes. It's all sealed, and their warning is, they point out it's this carriage is sitting on a plastic track, because what the carriage consists of is a whole bunch of tiny little ball bearings in a race that goes all around the sides of the carriage, and that's what gives it the freedom of movement it's going. But they can come out quite easily. So they point out to us, Makergear points out that you want to be very careful about installing a new carriage and keep it on this plastic carriage in order to assist you in sliding it onto the stainless steel rail without dropping any ball bearings. So let's get at it, and I guess first of all we'll remove the one or two remaining wires that we have, and that's for the extruder. And then we can, I think, just unscrew the extruder drive motor, if we can get in there. That seems to be working. And that wasn't enough. So are we missing a third bolt? Yes, we are. Does it come off now? No. Why not? Perhaps it needs the hot end removed. So maybe we need to remove the filament guide as well. And now we can see that the real problem here was the plug, the stepper motor, this attachment to the wiring harness. So there's our stepper motor. It's all free. We just remember the orientation. So we want to remove this harness here, which was holding the stepper motor. Now we have two screws at the back, which clearly are for holding this yoke that holds the timing belt onto the carriage as well. So there we are. Our carriage is free, and that is a nasty bit of dust there. So that's the stopper to prevent it from coming off. Just hold on to the nut underneath that with a regular pair of pliers, and that seems to be coming out just fine. Okay, put that on there to leave it there, and we'll see if we can move this. Yes, we can't actually move it off because there's one of the bolts in the stepper motor that's in the way, so we will remove that as well, and hopefully, of course, that will not cause great problems for the alignment or tension on the stepper motor itself, and we'll just be able to reassemble it with okay, well, that came off without falling apart. Now the big question, not only will this slide back on, but will it tighten things up? So there we go. We can put it beside the rail, and it's slid on quite nicely, and there is no discernible rock anymore, so that's good news. So while we're still here, we will put the bolt back in the stepper motor. Now we're safe. Okay, I'll come back here, and now we can put back on the pieces we took off. Well, I left those two in there. Well, isn't that smart? Smartest guy in the world. Okay, well, let's see if we can get these back in. That seems to be seating fine. And that's why I always have a whole bunch of these things lying around, because they always go flying off. Now we have our clamp, and I see I've left the bolts in there as well. Well, that's all looking good. I can feel actually a teeny bit of play right there still. So I'm thinking I probably should have gone for a new rail as well. But we will see. I mean, you'd think I would have noticed in the quality of the print, but you start to get used to just about anything that comes off a printer, whether it's good or not. Okay, so it's time to remount our extruder motor, stepper motor. That's done. Now we need to plug the stepper motor back into the wiring harness. Well, maybe we'll leave that for, well, no. Problem's not going to go away. Oh, look. Okay, there's more play in this harness than I thought. Voila! Okay, so that's taken care of. And now we can just remove the little heater block, which is, I am sure, still clogged. If you're interested, let me know in the comments below, and we can do a be happy to put together a video showing how to unclog a barrel on a Makergear M2. So there we have the hot end installed, although of course it needs to work in concert with the filament guide. So let's get the filament guide back on first. And then of course we move up the extruder until the hot end, until it's pushed in to match the taper on the filament guide, on the 3D printed filament guide, and then we just tighten it in place, and that should be all there is to it. So that should be that all done, right? I don't like that play there still, but as I say, a lot better than it was. Okay, that means we are done with the carriage installation. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to put on our fancy new fan case. We have our new fans. On the M2, it is only held on by one bolt in the bottom left-hand corner, and it's a fairly long bolt, so we can put in another bolt up in the other corner, and that'll keep things from wobbling around. These are just 3mm threaded bolts with a 3mm nut. That all looks good. Now we take our larger fan, trying of course not to pull off the leads. And because our wiring exits up through here, we want to make sure that it all comes together that way, and so we have a couple of bolts for that to keep everything in place. And I do remember the long bolt rolling onto the floor earlier, so I will go and collect that as soon as I have these other bolts torqued down. Hee hee! Who knew this could be so much fun, huh? So there we go. And then this, the long bolt, bottom right hand corner, bottom left hand corner. Well, all depends on which direction, which end of the ship you're standing on, right? That's not actually a cat, that's me throwing my voice. Oh, maybe it is a cat. Oh, it's the cat I least like. Well, this is YouTube, so you gotta have cats, whether you like them or not. Go away. So, there we have it. Should work real pretty like. Now we just need to plug stuff back into the wiring harness. Thankfully all these, well, they were. I'm saying thankfully all these cables are labeled, and maybe they are. It would help if I weren't as blind as a bat. There's the heater. Next one up is the thermocouple for keeping track of what the temperature is. Probably help if I put that in the right way. And we have a couple of fans. Fan 1 and fan 2. Let's presume the big one is fan 2 and the small one is fan 1. And we should be all done. Now all that's left is for us to install the fuse. Wonder how this is going to go. These are tiny little miniature screws, fuses, miniature screws, for printed circuit boards. There we are. Tiny little fuse. And it goes somewhere in there. So I have it sitting there in the fuse thing, and now I guess I'm just going to use a screwdriver to push it in. And hopefully that's all seated. Alright, slide the cover back on. As I mentioned earlier, I certainly don't blame Makergear for this thing not lasting forever, particularly when I didn't lubricate it. And they say that you're supposed to lubricate it with white lithium grease. This is enough lithium grease to probably lubricate 30 machines for all eternity. Why 30? Okay, 300. Alright, no, 3,000. Well, you know, a lot. It's an industrial size quantity of lithium grease, but it's all that was available. So we put a little on the rail, I guess. Does it say shake or anything? Keep out of reach of children. I'll bear that in mind. Should I see any children hanging about looking for lithium grease, I will chase them away. everything is in great shape. New hot end, new carriage, new fan holder so that we've got the fan off onto the side and so we can film as things are being printed. And then finally, a new fuse downstairs so that everything will work as it used to. I'm supposed to probably say something about subscribing to the channel. Please won't you? If you like this video, click the thumbs up. You could consider being one of our patrons on Patreon. Check out our homepage. The link is below. And, you know, there's also a link down below telling you where you can go to on Thingiverse to download a copy of this fan mount for the Makergear M2. Of course, we also encourage you to visit us at our website at printablescience.com, where all the science that fits we print.